more gangsters, that's the person that could accomplish much. The truth is, the most powerful of all emotions is love. Infinitely more stronger than hatred, because essentially hatred is love, but directed in a negative way. So it's not hatred is stronger than love. Actually, hatred is love. It's just a misplaced love. And another misplaced love, of course, is anger. But as an emotion itself, there's nothing stronger than love. And we all know this because we're all hopeless romantics. And everyone's always looking for love, and everyone's always trying to find love. And since the beginning of Adam and Chava, you know, that elusive quality called love. But Torah is very practical. And the Torah says there is a love, it's called loving God. But it's not ethereal, this love, because it says, so it's amazing that the Torah is not ashamed or embarrassed or shy to use the word love, and says that God wants your love, and God wants you to love your fellow man. When the Rebbe took over his leadership in 1951, he said, and he didn't mean this as a joke, he said that in America there's a custom to begin something new with a statement, a mission statement. So he's going to tell us a mission statement, the mission statement of Chabad Lubavitch. The mission statement is that there are three loves. There's loving God, there's loving Israel, and there's loving Torah. And these three loves are actually one. It's not possible to love the Torah and yet not to love a fellow Jew. It's not possible to love God but not to love His Torah or His people. And it's not possible to love a Jew without loving God and loving Torah. These three loves are one. And that's why if you would have been someone that had to imagine how can you be successful in 1951? What PR, what kind of public relationships would you use? What kind of influence would you try to create? And the Rebbe said that we will conquer the world for God through love. And told stories. After teaching Kabbalah and Hasidus, told the story of love, how the Alter Rebbe loved, and the Mittler Rebbe loved, and the Tzemach Tzedek loved, and the Rebbe Marash loved, and the Rebbe Rashab loved, and my father-in-law loved, and he left it open, and I loved. And in all of the Rebbe's open leadership, all you felt was love. Yossi Jacobson is fond of repeating this. I'm not sure where he got it from, whether it's true or not, or maybe he made it up, but it's a good thought. He says that in one school, every year, at the end of the year, a teacher, let's say the third grade teacher, would write an assessment on each child and give it to the fourth grade teacher so that that teacher should know what to expect. So he wrote down the better students, the worst students. This guy's a gangster. This one needs attention. This one is a sweetheart, and so on. And he gave it to the fourth grade teacher. He then asked the fourth grade teacher to read over the list. And if there's any questions that he has, he'll be happy to share with him some information. So the fellow looked it over and made a special notation of who are the troublemakers, and thanked the third grade teacher for his assessment. So he says, well, don't you have any questions? He says, no. He said, well, don't you want to know how I handled the troublemakers? He says, actually, it's not important how you handled it. I know how I'm going to handle it. He said, oh, really? How do you know it's going to work? I mean, why don't you want me to tell you? I'll tell you what I tried, and then you can figure out what you could adapt. He said, no. If you put down troublemaker, that means I know what I have to do with this child. I have to show him a double measure of love. One, because he's my student, and one to compensate because you didn't show him enough love. I don't need to find out how you punished that kid and how you kept him in line. That's not helpful for me. The fact that at the end of the year, you assess him as a troublemaker means you did not love him. For maybe good reason. But I know what the solution is for the lack of love, and that is to love and love even more. The Lubavitcher Rebbe has a message, had a message, taught the message, remains with the message. And that is, you conquer this world, you transform this world through love. You love God, and you make this world into a godly place. You love Torah, and therefore you absorb the message of Torah. And perhaps, most of all, if you love the Father, you love the children, and therefore you love your fellow Jew absolutely and unconditionally. What does it mean to love? All of us know love is a very complicated emotion. And many times, when a person loves, not always do you see the response of that love. And as a matter of fact, I'm going to stop for a moment and tell you a quick story that happened with the previous Rebbe, who we celebrate tonight as well. In 1920, so he just became Rebbe in 1920, and he was in the year of mourning of his father. So he was leading the prayers, and at that time, it was before the GPU, which is before the NKVD, I don't know what they called them, but the secret police came into the synagogue while he was wearing his talis and tefillin, leading the service, and they came over to him. Two of them were Jewish that spoke Yiddish, and then there was a third one, a Goy. They came to arrest the Rebbe. What was he accused of? You don't need to be accused of anything. You were Jewish, you're teaching Judaism, it was against Stalin, it was against the government, that's all they needed. So they said to him, come with us. And they didn't say, please. And the Rebbe looked at them as if they were dust. And he said, I'm in the middle of my prayers. And I'm not going to leave until I finish my prayers. So the two Jews who spoke Yiddish and knew exactly what the Rebbe wanted to get physical with him. To physically tear off his tefillin, throw away the talis, and then to manhandle him and schlep him down to police headquarters. It was that Goyish fellow, I don't know where he came from, who had respect. He said, leave him. Let him finish his prayers. Why do I tell this story? The Rebbe writes this in his memoirs. He said, I knew both of these Jews. One of them had lost all of his money through the Bolshevik Revolution, whatever it was, 1917. And he came to him because he came to the previous Rebbe, the son of the fifth Rebbe of Chabad, crying, I have nothing. And the Rebbe gave him a loan, introduced him to some wealthy guy that used to work with cigarettes, who put him in a position, gave him a job, and essentially gave him back his life. And the second guy, he says, I helped him as well. He doesn't say how he helped him. And these two people that the Rebbe helped, literally, with self-sacrifice, had the chutzpah to come, arrest the Rebbe, threaten him, and manhandle him. How interesting it is, in 1927, when the previous Rebbe was again arrested, and that's the famous imprisonment that we celebrate the 12th or 13th day of Tammuz, and there was this Lulav and Nachmanson. The two people that arrested the Rebbe were both people that had been blessed by the Rebbe and the Rebbe's father. In other words, these were downtrodden losers. But the Rebbes of Chabad loved the Jewish people and didn't ask how religious or how Hasidic or how decent they are. You're a Jew, you need help, they helped him. And it would be nice to think that every good deed that you do, of course, you're recompensed. And in these particular stories, the Rebbe himself was abused, humiliated, and hurt by the very same people that he helped. Of course, the sequel to the story is he's brought into the secret police station and he's sitting by a table. The three people that arrested him are on either side of the table. They all have guns and these large, like knives. I don't know if it was actually for protection or just to intimidate. And then there was the chief interrogator sitting at the edge of the table, and they put the Rebbe in the front, and they start basically questioning him. And the Rebbe starts off by saying, there has never been a man or a demon that has been born or will be born that will intimidate me. You don't scare a schneerson. It's like that. So this chief interrogator, of course this is famous, you all know this part, took out his gun that was on the table, and he said, you see this little toy? This little toy has taken away a lot of bravado. A lot of people speak like a big shot. They're not scared of anything. But this little toy has changed many people's minds, and they talk. To which the Rebbe said, that toy can have an effect on someone that has only one world, but he worships two gods. But a man that has two worlds and one God, he's not frightened. I have two worlds, I have one God. There's nothing that you could do to frighten me. The previous Rebbe spent his life doing favors for Jewish people. This is a man who taught Torah, who was a saint. I mean, he was a leader, he was everything. And spent his time doing favors for people that many of them not only did not acknowledge, but abused it and harmed him. And people asked the previous Rebbe, how can you do that? And his response was, if you do a favor for a Jew, maybe that Jew will respond. But if you harm a Jew, or you neglect a Jew, because he deserves it, no good will ever grow from that. Doing him a favor might create an opportunity for that person to do tshuva. Treating him the way the Shulchan Aruch says to treat him, he's lost. And I don't want to lose essentially every single Jew, or any Jew. Our Rebbe blessed people constantly. And as a matter of fact, I saw this on one of the segments, you know, where you see it, where the Rebbe's talking, and I was by the farbrengen. That's why I remember it, because I was actually there at the farbrengen, where one time someone was very, very disrespectful to the Rebbe, and he took out a big ad, and he spoke horrible. And the Rebbe then said, by the farbrengen, he addressed it. The Hasidim was seething. They wanted to literally track down this guy and take him apart limb by limb. And the Rebbe didn't want the Hasidim to do that. And he essentially said by the farbrengen, I don't remember word for word, but what I'm telling you, I do remember. He said, from me can only come blessing. It should never be that from me, from what I represent, a Jew should be harmed. The Rebbe conquered the world with love. Plain and simple. He loved God. He loved Torah. He loved Jewish people. There's no sense of which one went first, because it was all one. And what the Rebbe asked us to do was to conquer humanity through love. Not through preaching, and not through threatening, and not through acting more pious and holier than thou. And there are so many wonderful Jews that love to remind you of what you're not doing. And by the way, you should show me that respect because I am so blah, 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 holy and a yeshiva background. The Rebbe wanted love to be practiced. And it wasn't a foolish love. It was a constructive love. You heal through love. The Tzemach Tzedek lived at a time when there were soldiers, Jewish soldiers, inducted to the Tsar's army against their will to Kantanistan. And one of the famous stories is that he spoke to a group of sailors, 600 of them, and he gave them a mimer. And he spoke to them about how they should remain loyal Jews And that when they get a chance, just like when they polish their buttons of the uniform, they take sand and water. When they polish their soul, they should cry over the words of the Psalms. They can't study Torah because they don't have education. They barely could read Hebrew. So when they read those Hebrew Psalms, they should cry of their ignorance and of their distance. And that will cleanse their soul like you take sand and you cleanse the button. And one of the soldiers went over to the Rebbe and thanked him for his words, but said, Rebbe, we're soldiers. And you don't conquer the enemy with tears. You go out with a march. If you want us to polish our souls, what you said is true. Tears and Tehillim could polish the souls. Now this doesn't say, but this is how I'm reading it. But we're soldiers. Singing that we're Jews could polish our souls as well. That's how I started off. The Rebbe's first time, he led a group of Jews, 50 or less, to the botanical gardens. It was with a niggin. It was with a tune. The first farbrengen was, we must love. Period. 3 loves into one is like a laser beam. We could change the world for the better. Mashiach could come if we only loved God and loved Torah and practiced our love for a fellow Jew. And always, and at all times, besimcha, with joy. As a matter of fact, I was told, I didn't hear this personally, but I heard it from other Hasidim, that in the early years, the Rebbe, they would sing by the farbrengen serious Hasidic melodies. The Rebbe had a beautiful voice, by the way. And he got very into it, but he became very introspective with each niggin. And of course, who knows what the Rebbe was thinking? One could only see that he looked around us and saw what he was dealing with and felt the pain of the divine presence. And the Rebbetzin, when she would see her husband come home so broken, she said to the Hasidim, don't sing those songs anymore. Every song has to be quick. It has to be uplifting. Even the slow songs the Rebbe ruined. They would start with the Rebbe Marash's niggin, which is a nice, melodious niggin, and he would go like this, like this, like this. Every single niggin, like that. Everyone is uplifting. There was no such thing as a slow, meditative, introspective song. You do that before going to bed. Privately. You want to do teshuvah? There's a time and place. Don't read your email. Look into your heart and say, what did I ruin today? That's when you can do your song. When you're in public, you sing, ay, 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 ay. Everything is good, and everything's going to get better. And it is good, and it is going to get better. Anyway, l'chaim, l'chaim. We are Hasidim, we are Lubavitchers, we are Chabadniks, we are the 7th generation. This is the generation of Mashiach. Let's hope and pray he comes tonight. Am Yisrael HaNovim Mashiach,